Today, I want to talk about homeschooling your neurodiverse child. So, I've met lots of people who were already homeschooling before they discovered their kids had neurodiversities. Now, that was not my journey necessarily. My first child, I started homeschooling. I started because they had social emotional challenges in school, and they actually asked to be homeschooled since kindergarten. And I kept putting it off because in my mind, it was, I can't remove my child from the situation that they're struggling with because they need to learn to cope with the situation. Well, they asked kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, didn't ask in fourth grade. So I thought, okay, we're finally there. And then fifth grade, that was it. Fifth grade, we started therapy. My child went to the school psychologist whenever they were struggling in the classroom, and that was the end of that. That was when, in the middle of the night, I heard crying coming from the bathroom, and decided it was time to make a change, and we started homeschooling. And then my second child that I started homeschooling, my youngest son, I knew going into it I was going to be working with my child who had dyslexia. I did not know he had 7 other neurodiversities when I started homeschooling him, but I knew that I was going to have to learn to help my child with learning challenges. Many times parents just choose to homeschool their child, and then they may not even notice that their child has learning challenges because that's their only child, or they just are unschooling them and they don't necessarily see where their academic challenges are, or for lots of other reasons. Because when we first moved to California, I was already 2 years in tutoring with dyslexia, and I could tell many of the kids were dyslexic. Now, I wasn't interacting with these kids in academic areas. I was just interacting with them at Park Day. But once you know what dyslexia looks like, it becomes quite obvious. So that was actually why I did a presentation at a homeschool convention to educate parents about dyslexia, because I was running into so many kids that I could see they were dyslexic, and I didn't want to call them out and tell the parents necessarily, if the parents weren't necessarily open to my giving them that feedback. And also, I have found over the years with my tutoring company that sometimes parents will be homeschooling their children for many years and then find one of their children is not learning the same as the rest of their children. So that can be a challenge because we get stuck in our ways. And so these homeschool parents have created a homeschool environment that they are very comfortable with. And then they find that their child is not thriving in that learning situation. And so I have helped a couple of parents who were veteran homeschoolers, possibly homeschooling longer than I had been homeschooling, but they didn't know how to work with their child with dyslexia or with any learning challenges. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Is let's get into how to serve your dyslexic child differently, or your child with any neurodiversity. Sorry, I keep saying dyslexic, right? That's my expertise. So I'm really used to just saying dyslexia, but they don't have to have dyslexia to fit into the learning disability realm that we're going to address. So homeschooling your child who has learning challenges can be dealt with the same as your other children or differently, depending on the type of homeschooling you choose to do. So I want to back up a little and talk about expectations, because a lot of times people will pull their kids out of school, but attempt to continue the traditional school process. And for a child with learning challenges, that is not ideal. So when I first started homeschooling my youngest son, who has the 8 neurodiversities, I spent all summer planning a classical curriculum. Okay, that was totally inappropriate for my child who could not read. A classical approach to homeschooling is reading. It's reading classical novels and classical books. And that was not a good plan for my child who could barely read, right? But I had no clue. And so that's what the point of this training is to help you have a clue before you waste time like I did. I literally spent my entire summer coming up with a game plan that I figured out within a week or two of homeschooling was not going to work. So that's the first thing to keep in mind, is think about what kind of learner your child is. Let's talk about PE and extracurricular activities now. So PE can be so much fun. And these extracurricular activities in PE could be where your child shines, right? Because our neurodiverse kids have strengths, they have superpowers. And this is the area where they usually are really good, where they can outperform. Dyslexic, dysgraphic, dyscalculic people are usually really good at music, at art, at sports, and interacting with other people. So keep these in mind. Let your kids shine. Let them explore what they enjoy doing, and then really encourage them when they figure out what they like to do to continue to do those things. So I had a client once, and the little girl wanted to act, and the mom did not want to put her in acting because she couldn't read. So the mom said, well, I want to wait until she can read better before I let her start acting. I said, well, please reconsider that, because this is where she's going to find her joy. And thank goodness the mom took my advice and put her daughter in acting classes and let her perform in plays. And so the roles she had required her to read less, but because it was something that she was interested in, she was more than willing to memorize her script. So you don't necessarily need to read to act. One of the things that you can do to help your child if they want to act and they cannot read is you can record their lines and then have them listen back to them. And if they're an auditory person, they're going to absorb it by listening and repeating it back. So my kids did all sorts of different types of activities for PE. Now, we are not a very athletic family. When my kids were in traditional school, I had all my boys do football, and they were not very good football players, and they did not enjoy it. And so when we started homeschooling, we looked into what they could be interested in. So one year they did, actually 2 years, they did horseback riding. My youngest two kids really enjoyed horseback riding. Another couple of years, they did parkour. They really enjoyed parkour. Another year, they did archery. Another year, it was the year we had the Disneyland classes. And so they just walked around Disneyland, and they walked around when they were with their friends at Park Day. And that year, that was what their PE was. They didn't have any formal classes for PE, but we were able to count the amount of walking and playing that they did as their PE requirements. My youngest son did Taekwondo or Muay Thai for 2 years. And so whatever your kids might be interested in, they can pursue. Music. So they could participate in a class, perhaps. Some states allow students to do PE and music at their schools, and they can go into school every day or 3 times a week, how often the class is, and participate with that class. Now, we actually tried that 1 year for my youngest son to go to PE and music class, and found that it really interfered with our day, because we always had to be back home by 1 p.m. for him to go to these classes. And so we didn't do it for very long, maybe a month, and we just decided it wasn't worth it for us. But that's a way that your child can participate in classes for free if your state allows that. And there are quite a few states that do allow students to take a couple of classes at their home school. Home school meaning the school that is their neighborhood school. Another option is they can learn to play watching videos online, or they can just be self-taught, or you can buy a book or a program that they can teach themselves. One of my kids' girlfriends, she learned to play the ukulele, I believe, completely on her own. And when she was in high school, she performed the ukulele and sang at a local coffee shop for open mic night, and she recorded a song on YouTube, and it was a really good song. So there's lots of options, even if you don't have a lot of money for them to do activities. If your kids are into animals, 4-H is a great way to be exposed to animals, and doesn't have to be expensive. My kids wanted a pig. We were thinking of doing a pig when they were in 4-H. That was an expensive one. We didn't do that. We ended up just having the chickens. Chickens are quite affordable. They also have rabbits you can do 4-H with. So sheep, lots of options. I believe 4-H is everywhere in the country, and you might have to drive a little bit depending if you're in the city. You might have to drive out to the country. However, there's also 4-H's that are not geared towards animal husbandry. So 4-H is a great science option for your child that's quite affordable. And sometimes there's just strictly homeschool 4-H's, or maybe you want your child to be exposed with non-homeschoolers and you can just put them in a regular 4-H program. Art. So art can be done a number of ways. You can go to museums and take an art class. You can sign your kids up for a regular art class. You can have them watch online. You can get a book from the library and it shows you step by step how to draw cartoons and things like that. So whatever art form they're interested in is a great opportunity for them to develop that skill. My youngest son wanted to do graphic art and couldn't really communicate what he wanted to his drawings to look like. So he actually took art classes so that he could learn to draw the characters and images that he wanted to have on the pages of his books.